the 5-day working week is around 100 years old. Is it time we moved on and moved down to 4? I certainly think so, as do my guests today, who are both behind the campaign for a shorter working week, which has been adopted by the CWU, Telecoms and Financial Services sector. So in the studio, I'm joined by Karen Rose, Deputy General Secretary of the CWU for Telecoms and Financial Services. Thank you for joining me again.
That's okay, Michael. Nice to see you.
Down the line, I'm joined by Leetion, a CWU field organiser who's part of the group leading the shorter working week campaign. Thank you for joining me as well.
Pleasure.
We've got a lot to talk about. Before we do that, though, the video team here have put together a great launch video for the shorter working week campaign. Let's take a look.
We've had a 5-day working week for 100 years or more. And in a sense, it was time to move on. We've had changes in legislation in terms of work. But actually that 5-day week, that if you want that 40-hour week, has been truculent and stayed like that for a long time.
The standard 5-day working week is 100 years old, and workers are long overdue an update. And the thing is, we already know that a shorter working week is a win-win for workers and employers. We've run the trials.
We implemented a shorter working week almost 2 years ago now, about a year and a half, which is 30 hours a week for no loss of pay. So this really transformed my life, mostly because I'm a parent of a young son. So it really helped me to balance my care and responsibilities. Shortly into the trial, my marriage also broke down, and my ex was a couple of months after that diagnosed with cancer. So I was suddenly thrown very much into the deep end of parenting and trying to balance care and responsibilities and work. So the shorter working week came at exactly the right time.
We've seen improved mental and physical health. We've seen them be able to spend more time with their loved ones. And that's really crucial, having that extra time with loved ones. Those workers who don't want to miss out on their children growing up have extra time to spend with them. And at the other end, they've got more time to spend with loved ones who maybe don't have long left. Time is finite, and we need to make the most of it. And that's what a shorter working week can deliver.
It's important that when we have changes to the workplace environment, it's a benefit to everyone. It hasn't just got to be about the business owner, the company. It's also got to be about the workers.
I was sort of living proof of how important the shorter working week is for those with caring responsibilities, and therefore for promoting gender equality. So really what we found is that it's really important that the shorter working week is also spread out across more male-dominated industries, because what we found as well is that it's all well and good if women are able to do the shorter working week and work fewer hours to balance their care responsibilities, but it doesn't do much for gender equality if men are still working long hours and not able to do the same.
My name's Leetion. I'm an organiser in the Telecoms and Financial Services department of the CWU, and I've been involved in the shorter working week campaign. This is something that's been bubbling away behind the scenes for the last few months as we do a bit of research, find out more about the shorter working week and where it's been successful and how it's been successful, and most importantly, why it's been successful and how it's been achieved. And so the campaign, which is just in its early stages here, really has a multifaceted approach. There'll be a degree to which we need to shape the public discourse, and that involves using our media and political contacts. There'll be an element, obviously, in trying to negotiate it. But most importantly, this is something that will be won at the workplace level by union members, and the work that they're able to do to help support a campaign, help make the argument, and help persuade employers that not only will this benefit workers, it's actually in their interests as well.
And so as a member of the CWU, it's up to you to go out there and win a shorter working week. And you can do it because the arguments are compelling, and what we can win is incredible. A shorter working week for all. First of all within the CWU, later on elsewhere. What you do to push this campaign forward is going to be brilliant, not only for you, and for your colleagues, but for the whole of the UK, the whole of the world eventually, because it's time for a shorter working week, and it's time for you to go and win it.
So I'm going to speak to Karen and Kevin in a moment about the issues in that clip, sort of in that campaign video. I just want to clarify, before we go on, because lots of people in the comments sort of saying, how does this interact or how would it link with the universal service obligation changes in Royal Mail? So this campaign is specific, isn't it, to telecoms and financial services?
At the moment.
At the moment, yeah. I mean, I've spoken to Dave, and I know he's very much in favour
Yeah.
of a shorter working week as well, but I suppose there's very complex negotiations going on sort of as we speak when it comes to USO pilots. So we should sort of park that to one side for a moment,
definitely.
I imagine.
Yeah.
Let's start with you, Karen. We've heard sort of some arguments there for a 4-day week, or I should say a shorter working week, because that's what this campaign's about specifically, isn't it? It's not 4 days, shorter working week. Why has this been taken on as a priority by the union?
Well, I think that actually it was how we came about looking at the shorter working week was when we found that due to technology changes, which are quite prevalent in the organisations and companies where we have our members work in, technology advancements have come in and they are impacting on jobs, and we have been seeing redundancies. And so one of the first things when we started talking about a shorter working week was actually, it was about us trying to keep more people in work, but maybe working less hours. And because the technological advances actually usually end up being a cost-cutting success for companies, we just thought, well, why shouldn't the workers have their share? So that they get to work less hours for the same pay, and more of them remain in work, and there's less job losses. So that's kind of where we first started talking about it. And then, as Kevin said earlier, we started doing some research and realised actually there were quite compelling arguments for shorter working week. And you're right to point out, it's not necessarily a 4-day week. Lots of people would like to work a 4-day week with no loss of pay and, less hours. And it's not about compressing hours into less days either. So it's not working your existing hours over less attendances. This is actually about reducing the number of hours that you work every week and still not taking a pay cut. And what some of the research has come to light is that people who are well rested and less stressed, they're more productive. They don't take as much sick absence. So actually it does end up being a win-win. As somebody said in the video earlier, because there's a benefit to business for it as well, because they actually end up with a happier, more productive, less stressed, healthier workforce. And that's for a number of reasons. But what we are saying is, look, it doesn't really matter if you work 5 days at the moment and you want to continue to work 5 days. It just means that whereas you now might be working 7 hours a day or 7.5 hours a day, well, those hours would be cut down to maybe 5 or 6. So you work shorter days, even if it's the same number. So what we're interested in hearing from our members about it is, and that's why we're starting this campaign, and we're really interested in having feedback. Loads of people have signed up to the to be informed about the campaign. There's a register that you can sign up on our webpage on the CWU website, where they can sign up to be getting information about the campaign. And it's really, really good to see so many people signing up, so many people hearing about it. You can see there is a real interest out there. This is something that people are genuinely caring about. And we just need to make sure that we, I suppose, educate all of our members about the benefits. And I'm sure they can think of a few that we haven't already. And also about the arguments that there are for why this can be a win-win for employers as well. And that moves us on then later to our negotiating agenda. One thing I do want to say is we don't think that this is going to happen overnight. Things like this, 100 years ago, right, when basically workers won the weekend. That wasn't won overnight, and that wasn't won without a fight. But this is something that we think the time is now, and we need to start campaigning in order to get the benefits that technology and other such things is bringing to the workplace, so that our members, the workers, they get a benefit and a share of the modern world.
Kevin, I want to bring you in on this. I mean, I'd be surprised if there are too many people watching this thinking, I don't want to work shorter hours for the same pay. Like it's a good offer. It's presumably where I'd imagine more skepticism is going to come is from bosses and employers. So I suppose, could you talk a bit more about how, I mean, I know you've been sort of thinking a lot about this, studying this, working on this for this campaign. You're in a room with a manager and they say, how can I possibly pay this group of people the same amount that I'm currently paying them when they're coming into work, let's say 20% less? How do those sums possibly add up? What would you say to them?
Well, I'd start by saying the thinking behind it, the theory is that a better rested and more motivated workforce is more productive, that they take less sick absence, and that there's a greater desire to remain within that particular employment. And so there's a lower staff turnover. And all of these reduce the costs of operating by the company. I then direct them that's not just theory, that there is solid evidence to back this up. So you can look at the work that the 4-Day Week Foundation and the Autonomy Institute, think tank, that did a lot of research in this a couple of years ago, where they ran a pilot with 61 employers, where they all reduced the working week by between 4 and 7 hours, depending on the workplace. And they found overwhelmingly that not only did productivity not suffer, productivity improved as a result of it. So they found that over the pilot period, on average, revenue rose by about 1.4%, which isn't massive, but they found actually that compared to similar periods from previous years, organizations were reporting increases of 35% on average, so indicating really healthy growth as a result of it. And again, that's as born of the savings that they're making and the added motivation for the workforce. And the real proof of that is the vast majority, 92% of those companies at the end of the pilot decided to continue with it after. And we just see all around more and more employers are embracing this as an idea. We just saw last month the South Cambridgeshire District Council decided to implement it. And it's not just in this country. We see Iceland now put it into law, their reduced working week. We see countries like Germany and Portugal having experiments with it as well. It's, there really is a wave of momentum building up for it. And for those companies that want to take advantage of, really being progressive, getting reputation of being a good employer, really attracting and retaining the best talent, it's best to get in on the ground floor rather than waiting until the end where everyone else is doing it. And if the companies are still not convinced, the real answer is that, well, let's have a trial. That's what we really want, a trial, in a range of workplaces, a range of different work types, different working patterns, and let's see if we can make it work. And if it's not working, let's see why it's not. And let's try and make it work. Let's actually, not just dismiss it out of hand, but let's just see if we can make it work. And, if it doesn't, it doesn't, but we'll try.
I suppose, could you put this somewhat in historical perspective? Because I know, and I'm sure this is what many bosses and managers will say, is that, this is impossible. We can't possibly do this. What are you talking about? But there is a historical example of people going from a 6-day week to a 5-day week, and they didn't all suddenly start getting paid less, and the sky didn't fall in. In fact, we had a century of fairly decent growth. It's been fairly stagnant over the past 10 years.
It's impossible. We can't possibly do it. It's the mantra of employers through the ages. We've certainly heard that before.
And I suppose what I'm getting at is sort of like what's the process whereby sort of these weeks have been shortened in the past? So as far as I understand it, it was the grandson of John Boot. I was just reading about this today. He's the grandson of the founder of Boots, gave workers the Saturday off as well as Sunday in the Great Depression to avoid laying people off. But then he saw such a big increase in productivity that he kept the work pattern, and then that sort of caught on. And obviously the trade unions were very active as well. I suppose how can we sort of look at how this has been done maybe in the past and think this is more realistic than if someone's watching this, I suppose, saying this is just pie in the sky, how would you sort of convince them otherwise?
I mean, the 8-hour day has an even longer history than that, way back into the 19th century. It was actually gas workers in London who were the first to secure an 8-hour day, down from like 12, sometimes 15-hour days that they had. That was in 1889 by the precursors of the modern GMB union. And they won it under a slogan of shorten our hours to prolong our lives. It was a very emotive, serious point they were making, and one that really involved a lot of work. And in their case, they actually took industrial action to secure it. But it was a long and hard campaign, but they secured it. 40 hours didn't really become a norm until Henry Fonda really introduced it Henry Ford introduced it in the Ford Motor Company, reducing the hour from 48 hours to reducing the day from 48 hours to 40 hours a week. Sorry, and as you may know, Henry Ford was not a great friend of trade unions. He it wasn't typical of him to do things out of the kindness of his heart, but he did it because his research told him, and was subsequently borne out, that those workers were going to be much more productive and much more loyal in a very competitive industry, the car making in Detroit at the time, than they were on longer hours. And eventually, his competitors cottoned onto that as well, although they weren't particularly happy about it to begin with. But it's interesting, the NEF, the New Economics Foundation, a couple of years ago, they did some research that said that the UK would have been on target to reach a 30-hour week by 2040 had average hours continued to fall after 1980, in line with the initial post-war trends. And in other words, between 46 and 80, the week fell from 46 hours to 40, and then since 1980, it's been pennies. It's not fallen by a great deal. But if it had continued to fall at that rate, we'd be staring at 30 hours in the not too distant future. So historically, hours have continued to come down, but not in the last 40, 45 years. And I suppose that's what this campaign is looking to address, is get us back on the front foot and say that, especially with all the changes that we're seeing in the workplace, all the improvements in technology, it's time that workers get their awards from that as well.
Yeah, that's really interesting about the 1980s. It's probably a Thatcher thing. She wanted people to work longer hours, so she didn't want this trend to continue. Interestingly, John Maynard Kane is probably sort of the most distinguished economist of the 20th century. He wrote an essay in 1930 predicting that within a century we'd all be working no more than 15 hours a week. It's only 5 years away, so it's not necessarily a prediction which has been borne out, but it would have been nice if it had been. The argument there being that productivity is growing so much that we should be able to work less and still live luxurious enough lives. Let's go to another video. So this one is hosted by you, Kevin, at a recent launch event for the CWU Shorter Working Week campaign.
We're here at the Mechanics Institute in Manchester for the launch of the department's Shorter Working Week campaign. I'm going to try and catch a word with a couple of the delegates.
What benefits do you think there'll be for members from a shorter working week?
For workers, it's going to be rest, better mental health, more relaxed, better family time.
I think you'd have a happier workforce if they're working a shorter week.
It's less stress. For businesses as well, there's a huge benefit. Obviously, you know, reduced in sick absences, more productivity.
You just think how many people could have their lives improved, whether it be caring responsibilities, whether it be education.
You can plan your weekends better, you can have more time with your family, you could pick up a hobby, a sport, whatever.
The funding doesn't seem to be there to sort the care, the care industry out. So I think working less hours would be a huge benefit to people's mental health.
Long term, the business would definitely see the benefits of having a happier workforce who is enjoying their work-life balance a bit better.
What would you do with a shorter working week?
Simply spend more time with my family.
I'd have more time with my children, especially my son who was autistic.
To have that additional day would be an absolute game changer for me, and it'd be a game changer for my family as well.
For me, with a shorter working week, I would probably spend a bit more time on my hobbies that I wish I could spend time on now.
Maybe a day to myself to go and do things, get things out of the way, then I have the weekend for family, spend it with my little one, go out with the wife.
What would you do with a shorter working week?
So, I like to sit down with older generation and have little chats, because someone who has no one can benefit, and it just makes time go by quickly for them. So I'd give up and do some volunteering work.
I might fill my time with doing some swimming extra or whatever, but somebody else might think, well, actually, if I'm finishing early on a Friday, off I'll go down to my caravan, can go away camping, you can do all sorts of things.
What would you do with a shorter working week?
Not really willing to say on camera.
I've thought about this a lot, and I know it's really boring, but with a shorter working week, I would have a clean house. What about you?
Well, I actually work part-time, so I have these extra days.
Oh, you lucky bugger.
And I found it a real sort of...
life-changing.
Yeah, life-changing. I think that's the right word, yeah. And so in that time, I've learnt a language, I've learnt an instrument, I've spent time with the kids that I wouldn't otherwise have got to spend.
I'm so jealous.
The hoovering's still not got done.
Oh, wow, okay. Fair enough.
But yeah, I've loved it. So there you have it. A wide range of views with a real focus on spending time with loved ones, caring, but also relieving stress and addressing mental health issues. It's a transformative issue, one that has real potential to change workers' lives for the better. But it won't be won overnight, and it won't be won without the collective strength of every member. So check out the comments below for more information about the campaign and the role that you can play in it, and deliver a shorter working week for members, a campaign whose time has come.
Thank you, Kevin, for that brilliant video. I'm going to start with you, though, Karen. You were at that sort of event as well. Tell me, what was it about? What was it for?
It was just to launch it, really, and to kind of get across the message to our branches. We invited the branches in, all the branches from Telecoms and Financial Services. It was to get the message across to them that we're launching this campaign. What we wanted them, we had somebody there, Phil Lindsay from the 4-Day Week Foundation, and he gave them a talk and explained to them that the 4-Day Week Foundation run workshops that we want them to all sign up to get a better understanding of what a shorter working week means, and the benefits from it, the arguments, all of those things. We also had Peter Dowds, MP, who you saw earlier on the video, and he has he actually put in an amendment to the Employment Rights Bill, which was about a shorter working week. And he's very much, as you could probably see from the clips on the video earlier of him speaking, he's a real advocate for the shorter working week. So he spoke to the branches as well. Emma, the lady you saw speaking earlier, who had already won a shorter working week, and she explained the difference that had made to her life. And we also showed the results of a survey that we'd done of the membership, the CWU members, that is, in Telecoms and Financial Services, because we asked them about a shorter working week just to see what they would think about it. And we had really positive answers and results from that. And a bit like the video that we just watched, where people had lots of ideas as to what they would do with the extra time. Certainly, the CWU members had lots of ideas about what they would do with the extra time as well.
And I suppose you can. The argument from the government's perspective, I think, is easier than the argument from the business's perspective. Because from the business, you're saying you'll increase productivity so that it'll work out the same for you anyway. But from the government, if you've got people who can spend more time looking after their family, can go to the gym a lot more, That's going to make a much healthier population, isn't it?
Well, I think that it does. And I think that it's not just, it's reduced stress, right? There's an absolute mental health pandemic at the moment, I think, because it has become a major issue in so many workplaces. And there's probably lots of reasons for that, but I think part of it will be because of work intensification and because of working long hours in a much more intense environment, which a lot of CWU members that we represent do now. But people had lots of ideas, and somebody said in that video that, about there's a crisis in the care sector, for example. And I actually think that, most people with an elderly relative would actually quite like to be able to help out more, as opposed to relying on the care system or having strangers in that would care for them. They'd like to actually have that time back and do that themselves. So there's a benefit there, which is a societal benefit, because that actually, I think, is a benefit to the government, because it actually means if you've got volunteers and family members doing some of the stuff that we're relying on the social care system to do at the moment, then obviously that's less requirement for them to be spending on social care. And we know that there's a shortage of the services in social care. So there's those benefits. The benefits, if people have got more time to exercise, go to the gym, go out walking, all of those things, there are massive health benefits to that. And that has a knock-on effect in terms of taking pressure off the NHS, because a healthier population needs to spend less time visiting doctors and hospitals. So there are benefits for the whole of society, and there are certainly benefits for the government, for the state, from a shorter working week, just because it is multifaceted. The way that it could transform lives. And yes, probably it would result in people living longer. Somebody said that as well, I think.
Yeah.
But, that is really important, because as a working population now, and this is another thing. So we're hearing all the time about how the retirement age is increasing. So, it used to be 60 for women, then it was 65. Now it's 67 until you have your state pension. They're talking about it going up to 68 for some people. And then you hear a lot of the younger generation saying, oh, it looks like we'll be working till we're 70, right? So you actually need to be healthier in order to continue working, right? And when you eventually do retire, you need to be healthier to be able to enjoy your retirement at an older age. So that, again, is, it is something that, with an eye to the future, we really need to think about.
You don't want to retire and go straight into a care home.
No,
It's
absolutely
not. An attractive proposition after a lifetime working. Also, I suppose the healthy population, sort of going back to, is it about the state or is it about the employer? Obviously, employers prefer their employees to be healthy because they take less sick days.
Well, of course they do. That's probably one of the biggest wins.
One of the biggest wins, I think, with the short working week is, from what I've seen other studies, is people do have a lot fewer sick days because you finally get to rest. And one of the reasons why people take a sick day sometimes is because of burnout. That has a sort of physical effect on their body, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Kevin, I want to talk to you about this, and just in terms of sort of like, who is this campaign directed towards? Is it directed towards workers, sort of to get them excited about this? Is it directed towards employers to say, this is a good idea, you could make even more money if you did this? Or is it directed at government to say, we want you to change the law to force employers to give people more time off?
I'll just come very briefly back on the point you're making there about sick days. Actually, that pilot that I referred to before with the 61 employers had a 65% reduction in sick days, so a massive saving from sick days. But to answer your question there, the answer is all of them. But this, as Karen has said, it's not something that's going to be won overnight. There's no one that currently the union has recognition with is beating down the door to be offering this. It's going to be a long campaign of persuasion. So obviously, we have to convince employers. What is helpful then is that the broader societal discussion provides a context that helps to persuade employers. So, the more other companies are bringing this in, the more that politicians are trying to push it, trying to talk about it, the more the media is covering it in a positive way, then obviously that helps negotiations. But on both of these fronts, it's going to be absolutely vital that members take part, because really they can also add their muscle in those discussions. So this is a longer term campaign. It's not going to be one next week, and the campaign is going to have different stages. So this initial stage is really about raising members' awareness of why this is a really important issue, the benefits that we stand to gain from it, but also that it's not pie in the sky. This is happening elsewhere, and there's no reason why it shouldn't happen in the workplaces that the CWU has recognition in. So that'll be the first stage, and then we'll move on to how we approach employers and how we engage in the wider discussion as we move on. But really, this first stage is about spreading the word, educating people, and getting us ready for those subsequent stages.
And we've got one more video to show. So these are members of the Telecoms and Financial Services Executive talking about the benefits of the Shorter Working Week campaign.
We need a meaningful reduction in the working week. Think of the hours that you could get back across the year. There has been trials across the UK in multiple companies on a shorter working week, and there has been the benefits for the employers too. There has been those productivity increases. So not only do you benefit from a shorter working week, but also businesses do too. We've seen technology and what technology has done across multiple industries, and we need some of the benefits that employers are seeing to also be beneficial to our members. And this is where we are asking for employers to consider and to work with us on a meaningful reduction in the working week.
A lot of change has happened across the businesses that we deal with in telecoms. And if I focus in on call centres, for example, it's clear that AI has significantly come into these areas. And the impact of that will be less calls, first contact resolution, a lot of self-serve with customers, which again will reduce the number of calls. And therefore it's crucial that we start talking around a shortened working week. But it's not just about that. If you look at call centres, due to the pressure of work and the way that customers engage quite aggressively at times, there's a significant higher level of sick absence around mental health. Companies that have introduced a shortened working week have been able to address those concerns, especially around AI, especially around higher productivity, less sick leave, less mental health issues, because members then have a better work-life balance, a better time to rest and resolve that.
Many of our members work in offices, call centres, and they're sat down all day. And the benefits by having a reduced attendance at work, less hours sitting down, brings massive benefits, both skeletally, but also cardiovascular. And reduction of stress. It's really important that people have less time at work to spend with their families and, on their life. I think when you think about some of the jobs that our members do, for example, in the 999 services, which is massively pressurized, very, very demanding, quite stressful because, our members are exposed to all sorts of very, very difficult circumstances. There's an obvious win there for a reduced working week for those members to be able to sort of rebalance and have that time away for their own well-being and stress release. So I think it's time that employers do start to look at the benefits of a shorter working week for the health of their employees and their well-being, and also for people being at work. Absolutely proven that a shorter working week brings higher rates of attendance because people are able to balance their lives quite naturally. So yeah, absolutely, it's time for a shorter working week.
Lots more arguments there as to why it is time for a shorter working week. Kevin, I know you've been sort of looking at the results of a survey which the CWU put out to its members in telecoms and financial services. What were the things that stood out to you from the results?
I think the main questions we were asking was, what do they think the benefits of a shorter working week would be? And 80% said that they would be more inclined to stay in their current employer for a start. So that immediately should be a signal that we send to employers. 76% said that their physical health would improve, and 72% said that they would experience less stress. Now, why do we think that might be the case? Well, it's not just about spending less time in a stressful environment, although of course that will help. For many of the people that responded, it was about just being able to get that work-life balance, be able to juggle things, juggle your different responsibilities, and just get a bit more joy in the life rather than just playing catch up. So there were lots of people saying that they would spend time on their hobbies, time on just life admin, the cooking and the hoovering. There's those that said that they would take up voluntary work. But the biggest things that people would say that they would do is 83% said that they would use that additional time for exercise or other things that would improve their health. And 73% said that they would use it for family or caring responsibilities. So that points to another thing as well. If you're able to spend that time with those people you need to care for, whether elderly parents or children or grandchildren, and obviously that has its own benefits, being able to spend the time with them. But the other thing it can do is it can also make financial savings for a lot of folk. So the average cost of an after-school club, for instance, for 5 days a week is £62 a week now. So if you can eat into that, that is obviously something to be welcomed. The average cost for having an under 2 in nursery at the moment is £263 a week. So these are massive expenditures. Now, obviously, you're not going to be able to necessarily get all of that, but if you're able to eat into it by a few hours, the savings are there to be made. Also, if it ends up in a reduction of working days, then there could be transport costs that would be saved as a result. And of course, if you're saving money, that's another potential source of stress that is being addressed. And a lot of people have financial considerations that cause them stress, and it's about addressing that as well. The biggest thing, I think, to come out of the survey was that, and it was a good response, so it was around nearly 10,000 people responded to it in the department. 91% said that they were strongly in favour of this as a campaign. And of that, there were thousands saying that they wanted to be involved in the campaign as well. And that's what we hope to tap into. And that's the message we want to get out of this is, right, you're involved, sign up to our mailing list and go and speak to your colleagues and make sure they know about it as well.
Yeah, let's close on that as well. We're going to come to an end soon, but I want to get sort of both of your final thoughts, and especially if someone's watching this. I know you've just said there, Kevin, they can sign up to this mailing list, talk to their colleagues, but what practically can people be sort of looking forward to in the weeks and months ahead? What forms might this campaign take? How might people be able to get involved? What are we looking at here?
So we are hoping that people are going to sign up to the mailing lists. Really, in many ways, the initial stages, we just want to get the conversations going, really, and we want to enthuse people. We want them to really get behind this campaign and be part of it, because, and look, it doesn't matter what we're doing as a trade union, we will always say, right, that together we can achieve so much more. And with this campaign, this is no exception to that. In fact, most probably, this is the kind of campaign where you actually do need everybody to back it, because that's how you win things like a shorter working week, is by having that whole army of people, that whole membership that are backing the campaign and everybody's behind it. That's what gives us leverage. We'd like people to become more active in lots of the campaigns we do, and more active anyway in union activity. But this is something we think that people are really enthusiastic about. And so the benefits of getting involved, actually, in lots of ways, I think will introduce them to the benefits of getting active in the trade union as well, right? So we are hoping that it's going to see more people. We always need more reps in the workplaces. So we're kind of hoping that it's going to generate some of that as well, because it is about building that real momentum behind the campaign. So the initial stages, because we're saying this is a real slow burn campaign, this is not something we're going to win overnight. It is about getting people to get behind the campaign, to sign up to the mailing lists, to take part in the events that there will no doubt be, because we are going to be running member focus groups and branch focus groups and that sort of thing. We want them to participate in those things. And this is about getting those conversations going, keeping this campaign alive and building it, because we're going to need to sustain it for a significant period of time before we'll be able to win what is the end goal, which is a shorter working week. So really, it's just about, I genuinely think, look, don't get me wrong, there's lots of things that people can get involved in, but I genuinely think the most important thing is to engage with the campaign, show an interest, keep that interest. This is something we need to keep alive until we win it.
Kevin, can I get final thoughts from you as well?
Well, just along those lines, I mean, first of all, we don't want to tip our hat too much in terms of what we're going to do and maybe give employers the heads up on it. But essentially, this first stage, as I've said, is about education. So please visit the website, a lot of resources, more information, some of the background that we've talked about, some of the evidence for how this is viable, and it's not pie in the sky, it can work. And spread that word, get your colleagues thinking about it, ask them, what will you do with a shorter working week? And really get people thinking about it. As we move on in a few weeks, we'll look to be demonstrating in the different employers the strength of feeling that there is. So that might take the form of petitions. It might take the form on just, have your picture taken with a sign that says, I support the shorter working week. And if we can just show the hundreds, thousands of people out there that are really passionate about that, that will add another element to the campaign. We've spoken as well about how we're going to have to use some of our media and political contacts. So there will be a stage further down the line where we're looking for help from every member in trying to put on a bit of pressure on elected representatives to be talking about this and supporting it. So there's going to be a range of activities that is going to involve really a collective effort to really get anywhere with it.
I'm just going to go to actually one question. So Scott Gill says, can the CWU say if the business has been approached about this and what was their response to this if they were? And my understanding is sort of like the phase of the plan is to sort of do the survey, get people involved, then put it to the employer on the understanding that they're probably not just going to say, brilliant, yeah. There's going to be some persuading that needs to be done.
Absolutely. And that's why we're saying, and what Kevin was outlining there is, we're building this from the bottom. We need that momentum behind this campaign. We need it for leverage. It's actually no different to any of the campaigns that the union runs in that respect. We always need the members of this union to be on board with the campaign, all of them together as a collective. That's how we build and win the campaigns. So no, we haven't approached the employers yet, because what we want to do is go with the most compelling argument, as well as proving that there is significant bow wave of need, want, wish, whatever you want to call it, among the membership, that this is something that they want. That when we go to those employers, we want to be able to say, look, all of your employees are telling us this is something that they want and they're prepared to fight for it, right? So we're coming to you saying, we'd like in the first instance for you to have a trial, right? That's what we will go to them with, but not yet. We need to build that knowledge, momentum, enthusiasm at the level of our membership in the workplace, and then we'll have a much better, more convincing argument and also more chance of winning.
That's really interesting. Karen, thank you so much for coming back on the show. Kevin, thank you so much for joining us. Really, really interesting conversation. I've been convinced for a very long time that we need a much shorter working week, and everyone does, especially for family life, I think.
Absolutely.
It's, when you've got to, oh dear, my set is collapsing. So we'll wrap up then. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you again next week. Until then, stick with your union.